Hey, this is Jamie with StoneMier Games. Welcome to my weekly live cast for all things related to StoneMier Games, random topics, random games that I'm playing, cats, as you can see Biddy in the background there, and any questions that you have. A lot of this ends up being me answering your questions, and I am more than happy to do that. Feel free to ask me anything. What do we have going on today? So today is actually the day when reviewers, advanced copy reviewers of Tapestry plans and ploys, can start sharing their opinions. So you'll start to see some reviews posted on the Tapestry plans and ploys page of our website. So far, the Cardboard Herald, Board Game Quest, and Tantrum House are the three reviews that I put there that I'm aware of, and hopefully there are more to come in the coming days. So you can have some information about whether or not you will enjoy this expansion before next week's pre-order and on an ongoing basis. Those reviews, the nice thing about reviews is that they are always going to be there. They're not going anywhere. So if you want to buy this expansion a year from now, those reviews will still be there for you to consider this purchase. Keith starts out right away with chocolate of the day. I have a little chocolate of the day today. Just a basic chocolate Hershey's dark with almonds. Just like one little nibble after this recording for me, and then I'll probably have a cookie after lunch. But yeah, just something small on my desk today. What about you? What's your desk treat of the day or your chocolate of the day? Socrates says, any news on when Tapestry will be available on Board Game Arena? Like with anything digitally related, it's completely in the developer's hands. I really have no idea. So feel free to ask Board Game Arena if they want to release that information, but I don't know it, and they haven't told me anything about it. But I can't wait for it to be on Board Game Arena, absolutely. Micah says, will there eventually be reprints of the original tweaked Tapestry civilizations? No, Micah. We have adjusted a few of the starting points for a few of the civilizations, but that information is easily printable on a single page of paper, and it's not something you need to refer to on an ongoing basis while you play. Hence why, or that's one of the reasons why we're not reprinting the civilizations. The other reason is that it's possible with thousands and thousands of more games of Tapestry that those tweaks will need to change again in the future. So we don't want to reprint something and say, like, sell you a batch of revised civilizations and then come back to you 6 months later and say, hey, we have a new expansion, we have 10,000 more data points and we need to revise those again. I don't think that would be fair to you. So it's much easier just to have a little page that you can print from our website, look at it on our website, or it's on the back page of the rulebook of the expansion that you can use. Tim says he's been enjoying Pendulum a lot, or it sounds like a first play. Can't wait to play again. That's great. Yeah, Pendulum is currently being shipped to most places. The freight shipping is super slow right now to Canada and Australia, so they are still waiting to receive their copies, but they're supposed to arrive this week, and they should be shipped out right away after that, either late this week or next week. So thank you to everyone in Australia, New Zealand, and Canada who are waiting patiently. And in the U.S., I learned today that our fulfillment center in the U.S. wasn't entirely following our instructions regarding champion orders. Champion orders are supposed to ship first, and they did that for the most part, but it seems like they shipped some orders out of order. So we have now realized that, and they are finishing up the champion orders, and then we'll refocus on finishing the other orders. So I'm really sorry if you're a champion that is still waiting for your order confirmation. That's not at all our intent and not at all our process. So that is in the works now. Our fulfillment center should be wrapping up all the orders for Pendulum this week and the Scythe complete rulebook. And in Europe, I think everything's done as far as I've heard. Nathan says, did the champion orders ship first policy apply to orders containing only Scythe rulebooks? It applies to that product category. So Pendulum takes the most time, so we kind of instructed our fulfillment center to focus on Pendulum first and then get the rulebooks, because they can ship a lot of rulebooks very, very quickly. So if you are a champion who ordered the Scythe complete rulebook, you should get your order, or you should receive your order confirmation before a non-champion who also just ordered the Scythe complete rulebook. Chris says, are Biddy and Walter in the expansion for Plans and Ploys? No, they were already in the base game, so they're not in this expansion as well. I'll answer one other question, and then I'll jump over to my topics for a minute. Kyle says, what is my favorite international style food, and what is your favorite dish in that category? That really depends on my mood, Kyle. I do love Japanese food because I studied abroad in Japan. I love a wide variety of Japanese food. Since going vegetarian, I have reevaluated like what I can eat. So I used to love sushi, but I can't really eat sushi anymore, or most sushi, and any sushi with raw fish, or fish, period. So I've kind of had to reevaluate what types of international foods I can really enjoy. Mexican is something I can enjoy Mexican food, and despite being vegetarian, and Middle Eastern food like Mediterranean food, hummus. Uh, uh, what is the main dish? Falafel. I really enjoy those dishes as a vegetarian. But I like a wide variety of international foods. I love pizza. I mean, I love Italian food. I know there's a lot of Italian food beyond just pizza, but it's hard for me to narrow down one. I generally just have a craving for a specific food at any given time, and even like if anyone ever comes to St. Louis, I have a long list of different restaurants broken down by category. You can see there are like at least 20 different, I think, categories of food. Most of them different nationalities, ethnicities, and cultural types of food that I recommend. I'll jump over to my topics real quick. I don't think I have anything big going on with StoneMier games this week that you might be interested in, but feel free to ask if you can think of anything. Next week, we have our e-newsletter that coincides with the Tapestry Plants Employees pre-order, so there'll be some information there. I might have some Wingspan digital news at that point. I've been working on a couple different playtests, a couple for an expansion. Been working on design of a couple of my games, and putting through into production one game and getting close on an expansion and some other things. I know that's all very vague. I haven't given you any information there at all, but feel free to ask and I'll see if I can answer your questions. Recent plays of games that I've had, I've played a couple games that I really, really enjoyed, actually. I played The Crew a lot this weekend. I believe The Crew won the Kennerspiel this year, the award that Wingspan won last year. Megan and I played through maybe 15 or 16 of the different scenarios in The Crew. It's a cooperative trick-taking game that we really have enjoyed so far. I'm not very good at it, but I've had fun with it. I also played Air, Land, and Sea for the second time. Really enjoyed that. Great two-player game. Also played Imhotep the Duel, another two-player game. I also played Through the Ages, a new story of civilization for the first time. I played the original version, but not a new story. That my video about that will come out in a few weeks because I'm pretty far ahead on my videos right now, my weekly videos. But that was fun. I played that on Board Game Arena. Also played Sulkin and Dice Forge on Board Game Arena. So those are my recent plays. I'll talk about videos that I posted recently in a minute. But let me jump back over to questions. Bruce says, "Who is that behind your curtain?" Oh, Biddy is back there in the chair. Did Walter sneak behind the curtain when I wasn't looking? Walter might be behind the curtain for all I know, but I think Biddy's on the chair right now. Sometimes Biddy does stay behind the curtains. Levy says, just to support your statement that digital implementations will result in a physical purchase, I wanted to share that I was always a little hesitant to purchase Charterstone, but recently purchased the app, and now I can't wait to buy it and play it with my family. That's great to hear, and that's been my experience too. Most recently, I think with probably more recent examples, but Shards of Infinity was a great recent example for me. And I actually really want to try One Deck Dungeon. I've heard great things about that digital implementation, and I'm going to make a note about that so I can give that a try. Han says, will there be a reprint of the Scythe rulebook? Yes, we are going to make more. We're working on the hardcover version, and we are going to make more of the spiral version. We've recently discovered that there are some Automa issues in the rulebook. So if you don't use Automa, the solo mode, you are completely fine. The rulebook you have is completely fine. If you use Automa and want to rely on the complete rulebook, I would recommend not throwing away your original rulebooks for now, because we do need to fix some things. You'll get a if you already bought the rulebook, you'll get a notification about this later this week, where we'll talk about the solution for this. It won't cost you anything. We are going to make sure you're taken care of if you already bought the Scythe Complete Rulebook and rely on Automa or plan on playing with the Automa system. So we are working on that. I don't know if that's what you were referring to, Hans, but if so, you'll learn more about that later this week, if it applies to you, if you have already ordered the rulebook. Miguel says, are you stressing or are you eating right? You look thinner. I think thinner is good for me. I was a little overweight for a while, and now I am on a pretty healthy diet. Still enjoying chocolate and cookies, of course. I'm not going to ever give those up. But I'm kind of at my ideal weight right now, right around between 145 and 150. And I work out every day. So I'll take that as a compliment. If I look abnormally or unhealthily thin, feel free to let me know, but I definitely don't feel that way right now. Brian says, Martin Poole is joining us. Hey, Martin. Brian says, in board games you own, do you upgrade components? If so, is there a specific game element that you typically upgrade? I rarely do, and I think part of it is because often my upgrade is to get an expansion for the game, not to upgrade a component. And the reason for that is because my company makes metal coins, realistic resources, or we did make realistic resources. I have a bunch of them still. And so if I ever want a fancy resource upgrade or coin upgrade, I have it on hand from one of our other games. So I rarely do that. I think the one area I've been tempted to do that is a game that I don't even own, but I love the upgrades in Lords of Waterdeep. But I don't even own that game, so I probably wouldn't get it just for the upgrades. Let's see. Cody says, do you have favorite meat substitutes like fake meats, Beyond Burger, Impossible Meat, etc.? Yes, I mean Beyond Burger is the one that I have the easiest access to. In fact, I have Beyond sausages, the hot Italian sausages in my fridge right now. I do like Impossible Meat. Impossible, for as long as I've known, they've focused on restaurants, so I can't really buy that at grocery stores, but maybe they're starting to expand that. But I do like it whenever a restaurant offers an Impossible Burger or an Impossible Meat. But Beyond is the one that I mostly gravitate to. I'd love for there to be, I've been trying various fake chickens, like chicken nuggets, things like that. I would love for there to be a better, even better version of that because they haven't quite gotten it right. Like they've gotten the nugget texture, but not like the chicken finger texture. And I miss fried chicken. Like I didn't eat a lot of fried chicken, but I do really like fried chicken and I miss it. So I wish there was a really great viable substitute for that. There is a place in St. Louis called Chicken Out. It's a fairly new restaurant, and they have essentially like a Chick-fil-A sandwich with a fake meat. I forget the name of it, of the fake meat that they have, but it's very good. That's like the closest I've gotten so far to fake chicken that I really enjoy. I'll answer maybe a couple more questions, then I'll jump over to my topics real quick. Jean-Francois says, would you name one of your new games with a 2 behind it, like Scythe 2, or do you think it would hurt the sales of the first one? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure I understand. I'm guessing you're not saying, well, maybe you are asking if we would ever print a new edition of an existing game. And we have done that in the past, but I don't like doing that at all because it kind of means we didn't do our job right the first time. Something that I am willing to admit if it happens. But like this happened with Viticulture. The first Viticulture should have been what the Viticulture second edition was, and Viticulture second edition eventually became the Essential Edition, which is what we know as Viticulture now and have known as Viticulture since 2015. So it took a couple of tries to get that right, and I wish it hadn't taken a couple of tries to get that right. What I would consider doing is making a spin-off game in an existing world that we have. So we could take one of our brands, Scythe, use the example of Scythe, and create a completely different game in that world. But it wouldn't be called Scythe 2 because it wouldn't be Scythe 2. It would be a completely different game that just happens to be in that same world. Froylan also asked when Tapestry is going to be released on Board Game Arena. I don't know. That's up to Board Game Arena. Feel free to ask them. They don't tell me that kind of stuff, and they wouldn't tell me until they released it to everyone on Board Game Arena. All right, I'll jump over to my topics real quick. Videos that I filmed recently. I did a video on dungeon crawl games this past weekend, which I knew people would have some questions about it because I mentioned some games that maybe aren't traditionally seen as dungeon crawlers, but it's really interesting to me to see like the definition of a dungeon crawl game and how people think about dungeon crawl games now, which is the perception is also relevant. But a dungeon crawl game, what is the definition? I'll try to look it up real quick to see. Dungeon crawl board game. Let's see if we can find the definition. Dungeon crawl game, because it has a very specific. Okay, a dungeon crawl game is a game in which heroes navigate a labyrinth environment, battling various monsters, avoiding traps, solving puzzles, and looting any treasure they may find. So that is both a specific and a very broad definition. Because I think when we think about dungeon crawl tabletop games now, we think about miniatures on a hex-based grid where they're doing those exact things. And I think that's really interesting because I mentioned a few games that do not use that system, and I like that people are designing dungeon crawl games that aren't limited to hex-based grids. and tactical combat, basically. Because I think there's a lot more to that. And that's why I brought up One Deck Dungeon earlier. That's one that I haven't played in that format. And a few games on my list didn't meet that format. But some people kind of saw that video and completely dismissed it because they were like, oh, okay, this isn't a hex-based tactical combat crawl, so it is not a dungeon crawl game. Which was interesting feedback to receive about that. But I kind of expected that, and I'm okay with that. It was my list. This week, I'll be posting the list that I post twice a year. This is my top 10 favorite games right now. So that'll come out this Sunday. And it's a weird list this time. I filmed the video yesterday, and I did not consider games that I haven't played in the last 6 months because I didn't think that would be fair to consider for a favorites game list over the last 6 months if I haven't actually played them. And so due to the pandemic, most of my games have been either on Zoom, in person with Megan, so 2-player games, or on Board Game Arena. So that's a very narrow scope compared to the games that I've played prior to that. So it was a very interesting video to film. You'll see some very different games on that list that have not appeared on the list in the past, or have not appeared frequently on that list in the past. Tim says, is Santa Claus really on the Scythe board? He is. He is on the Scythe board. And Tim says he has a book tour coming to St. Louis in the future. Yeah, Tim, feel free to contact me directly via email, not on Facebook, via email, and I will I'll share my top St. Louis or favorite St. Louis restaurants list with you. I'm happy to do that for anyone who ever comes to St. Louis. Jenny says, have I played Mystery House? I have not played Mystery House. It's a bit different than the other escape room puzzle games, although riddled with language translation errors. If you like Unlock or Exit, you might want to give it a try. Yeah, I'll have to try that. Is that the one with like the physical house where you're like lifting up doors and windows and looking into it? That one looked really cool. I don't know if that's what you're referring to here. Martin says, how is the Breath of the Wild inspired game coming along? That's one that I've been working on this week. It is a massive game. It's coming along well, but it still has a lot of work to get done. I was hoping it would be ready by the end of 2021, but I don't think that's going to be the case, unfortunately. Ivan says, is there space exploration in the Tapestry expansion? Can you conquer planets and asteroids? There are additional space tiles in the Tapestry expansion, but you don't actually venture into space in the same way that you explore and conquer on the map in Tapestry. David says, with Codename Gold being this far along in development, seems like the most difficult part is done. Some of the difficult parts are done. There are more difficult parts to come. Are you thinking... when are you thinking about the release? I don't know. I mean, yeah. I don't like to talk about that until I actually know, because so much can happen during the production process, the pre-production process. I appreciate your enthusiasm and curiosity about it, but it's too early for me to tell at this point. I've said 2020. It'll be a 2020 release, but I really don't know the quarter yet. Zach says, do I think there will be 2 new game releases next year? If so, when do you think they will likely come out? Similar question. Yeah, I don't know when in 2021. I said 2021. But there will be two new releases next year. Yeah, 2 new game releases. Daniel asked if I've tried Cairn, Cairn. He says, it could be an interesting game for a My Favorite Mechanism video. I haven't played that one, no. I'll have to give that a try. Dylan mentioned Olympia for Mediterranean food when they visited me in St. Louis. I'm reading his comment. But yeah, Dylan visited us a couple years ago now, right, Dylan? Maybe 2 years ago. And we went to Olympia, which is great food, great Greek food here in St. Louis. Raphael says, will the hardcover include the automa corrections? Yes, it will. It will. David says, thanks to your answer, I bought Wingspan and the expansion, and he has a question. It's about sleeving. Is it possible to put sleeve cards into the original boxes? Yes, but with a disclaimer there. So sleeve cards, we've designed the insert to fit sleeve cards horizontally and vertically. So length and width, they definitely fit. However, depending on the thickness of your sleeves, you may really have to press down on the top to get them into the card holder, the card tray. So yes, but it depends on the thickness. I've seen some photos where it fits, and I've seen some photos where it doesn't fit, and that really depends on the sleeve that you use. But with the expansion, you do have a second tray, and so with the 2 trays combined, even with thicker sleeves, they should all fit. Gerald says, do I think Ian O'Toole would boost sales of one of your games? I don't know if Ian's here right now. He might have a thought about that. I don't know. I think Ian has a wonderful following. He's an incredible artist, and I think it's certainly possible. I think the art itself and how well it matches the theme for the game and how much like the cover art captures people's imaginations has a much bigger impact than the name of the artist. But it does come back to the artists themselves. So I think it would be more about Ian's art than Ian's name. Chris says, when do you estimate that you will again start considering submissions? Well, you're actually, the forum is open. You can submit games to us, and we still do actually occasionally look at it from time to time. But we are still booked for games over the next 2.5 years. So we are hesitant to accept submissions and kind of get people's hopes up that we might publish their game in the foreseeable future because we are pretty booked for that foreseeable future. So feel free to put it on the forum, and we do check it from time to time, but I don't know when we'll officially reopen submissions. David says, have I thought about getting a 3D printer to print components for games you are designing? I haven't. It seems like a lot of work. Honestly, it's pretty cool, but I think it's a little beyond my technical expertise. And plus, I have plenty of prototype components that I can use. Let's see. Jenny says, try panko crusted eggplant parmesan for that crispy fried feeling without the meat. That is actually a great idea. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, it doesn't sound healthy at all, but it sounds delicious. Especially, I wonder if I can stuff the cheese into the eggplant somehow and have it kind of oozing out of it. That sounds really good. Anthony says, how is the printed version of Rolling Realms coming along? We are currently playtesting Rolling Realms, doing blind playtesting for Rolling Realms, and I'm actually working on that this afternoon. So yeah, that's a very timely question. I'll be looking at some blind playtest feedback for Rolling Realms this afternoon. Cody says he's been playing Azul Summer Pavilion lately. Do I have a favorite strategy? Have I played the colorless mat variant on the back side of the player mat? I haven't played on the back side, no. As for my strategy, it kind of depends on the game. I am trying to get better at completing at least one of the stars because I found that it seems very difficult to win if you don't do that. So I think my current strategy is complete one of the stars, get as many ongoing bonuses along the way. So complete one star and work on maybe the stars that are adjacent to it, and then get a few of the numerical bonuses by the end of the game. But I'm not very good at the game. I just really enjoy it. So I don't know if you should listen to my strategy there. Jenny says that Madara is her favorite dungeon crawler because of the intricate narrative arc of the campaign. I love that you said that, Jenny. Yeah, I think that was missed a lot in my video from people who are thinking about the hex-based grids. That I think a dungeon crawl game, it originated with Dungeons and Dragons, and so a lot of that is the narrative itself, not the tactical combat. So I love that you said that about the narrative arc and the story that the game is telling you, or that you're telling as you are going on this adventure. And Sean, you're totally right. I should have mentioned Dungeons and Dragons. I haven't played Dungeons and Dragons, but I definitely should have mentioned it as the origin of dungeon crawl games in that video. You're absolutely right. And Steven actually had a great comment in that video in the comments about Dungeons and Dragons. If you're interested in looking for his comment somewhere, it's somewhere on the YouTube video. I did a post last week about on my StoneMier Games blog about guided journals. I'm kind of fascinated by this concept of a guided journal, and didn't hear a lot of thoughts on that post. I'm curious if any of you have ever tried a guided journal. There's one called Burn After Writing, where you use this guided journal. It has writing prompts and things like that, and then you're supposed to burn it when you're done. There was another one that took kind of a fantasy adventure feel to it, where you, instead of setting a goal for yourself in this journal, you set a quest, and it helps you go on that quest and prompts you on a daily basis about how you are making progress on that quest. I thought that was really cool, rather than just having a blank journal, that they have these kind of themed guided journals. And the one that I have, the only one that I recommend is the Fail Faster Playtesting Journal. I think this is a great resource if you're playtesting a game. And the other post I did was about Stitch Fix. This is a completely a different thing where you subscribe or you don't actually have to subscribe. Basically, the idea is that you have a personal stylist and an algorithm that matches you with clothing. So instead of you going to Stitch Fix and saying, "Hey, I want those pants and this shirt," you say, "This is my size. This is my budget. These are the things that look good on me or that I like wearing. Send me something that fits that description." And Stitch Fix's algorithm and supposedly their personal stylist match you with clothing that they think that you'll enjoy, and they send it to you, and you pay for what you like, and you send back what you don't like. And so I did a blog post on Monday about that level of personal service on a website, paired with perhaps a survey or algorithm that maybe matches you with a game or a product. And so it's something I'm thinking about for StoneMier games. I don't want to add too much more work to Joe's workload, because I know Joe, our director of communications, stays very busy right now. But I would love to find a better way on our website to help people who are looking for a specific product or don't really know what they're looking for, and to see if we can help them very quickly to help them make that decision. David says, any news for the Canadians waiting for their pre-orders of Pendulum? Yeah, sorry, David, I mentioned this probably before you came on, but the Canadian shipment is supposed to arrive this week. Freight shipments have been very, very slow recently, and this one was much, much slower than we even thought. But it is supposed to arrive this week, and D6 is ready to start fulfilling those orders as soon as they arrive. Mike has a great comment about lending some friends Wingspan, and then to bring them into the hobby, and then they gifted him a copy of Wingspan as well. I won't read the whole comment, but I like what you said there, Mike. Kevin says Gold was being released in 2020, and I definitely did mean 2021 there, not 2020. Time is weird now. David says, can I go over what is pre-production for a board game? What are the steps involved? So pre-production, so basically we prepare the files for a game, and we mostly means my graphic designer, but it's also a process that involves me and Joe and proofreaders. Ultimately comes back to Christine. Christine creates printer-ready files and sends them to Panda. And that begins a process of Panda looking at those files and sending us digital proofs that we need to then approve. And usually they found some errors with, alignment, with layout, things like that we have to fix and go back and send them revised files. That's part of pre-production. Another part of pre-production is components. And usually we start this a little bit in advance of this file process that I mentioned. Like if we need to make a special custom component for a new game, we don't wait until the digital files are ready. We've known about that component for quite some time, and Panda has been working on that. That is part of the pre-production process, to get the components approved, and if there needs to be molds or die cuts or things like that those are approved in advance. Panda also has a whole pre-production process that happens independently of us that is about like setting color plates and getting the die cuts for punch boards and things like that. And usually that can take a while. Because they really want to get that right, because they're going to use those color plates for thousands and thousands of games. Also, for games like Pendulum, every now and then we we always get a pre-production copy, but we get this pre-production copy and we look at it, and oftentimes we play it and realize that maybe something is or isn't working as well as it should. And so at that point, that is still part of the pre-production process, this pre-production copy that we review carefully to make sure it's ready. And if we have to make changes, that extends the pre-production process. So it's this whole process of getting things right before the heavy investment is made in the things that result in the final files, the final printing of the game. Sean says, did I try the ravioli lasagna recipe that I sent? No, Sean, I haven't tried that yet, but I really, really need to. I appreciate the reminder there. Rolly says, any details on the Wingspan Oceania expansion? I don't have any news today. No news right now. I should have more news about it in maybe about, I think 2 months is when I'll make the formal announcement. Is that right? Yeah, end of October seems right. Maybe it's the beginning of September, beginning of October. Actually, I need to check those dates. But no, not right now. Not right now. David says, will I ever sell metal versions of the characters in Scythe? And no, we don't have any plans to do that. The reason for that is that if mechs existed, they would be made out of metal, and so hence metal mechs. If the comparison for humans is to make miniatures out of a flesh-like substance, and we can't and won't do that. So Yeah, we made the mechs for a reason, just because they're made out of metal. And you could say, why don't you do the airships? And we're not going to do the airships out of metal either because of the balance issues they would provide. I mean, they have to balance on a thin little pole and stay balanced. And I worry about that with metal, especially if they toppled over and damaged the boards. Zach says, if I had to choose just designing or developing games or publishing games, which would you choose? In some ways, I've kind of made this choice because most of my time is spent on operations and marketing and running a company. Um, but so I guess I'll answer between designing and develop. I don't know if I could answer that because I really enjoy the balance. I enjoyed all those operations things, but I enjoy dabbling in design. I enjoy dabbling in development of other designs that we are publishing. I enjoy the variety. So it's really the variety that I enjoy and want to stick with. Joe, you did miss chocolate of the day. It's a very basic one. It is just one single Hershey's nugget. I do like this is like my favorite size and shape of chocolate. This is a special dark with almonds Hershey's nugget. I think I've covered all of my topics, so I'll focus on questions from here on out, unless I think of a random topic that I haven't covered. David says, would StoneMier ever consider publishing a game as light as Splendor or Century? Century Golem seems like a game that has StoneMier quality and feel, but maybe too light. Um, they're not far off. I mean, one of our stipulations is that we try to focus on event games, like the main focus of a game night. So the minimum length of an event game, I think, would be 45 minutes, and ideally it would be around 60 to 90 minutes. We did publish Between Two Cities and continue to reprint it, and that falls way below that barrier. That was when we were kind of experimenting, and we realized that we love Between Two Cities, but it doesn't exactly fit with the principle that we established after that of going after event games. We didn't want to end up publishing a bunch of fillers. As much as I love fillers as a gamer, it just didn't feel right for StoneMier to spend a lot of time on them. So Splendor, I wouldn't call a filler, but it's more of a filler plus. It's probably a 30-minute game, which does fall below the length and feel of an event game. I'd say the same thing about the Century games. Steven says the Wingspan bird feeder has many pieces. Any idea if there are 3D printer files for the individual pieces? We have lost one, and one has broken. Steven, well, just request a replacement. We're happy to send you another punch board so you can touch that up a bit. We don't have a 3D files for that. Sean says, have I considered a space-themed game? We have seen some submissions for space-themed games. Yeah, and we definitely have considered them. Cooper says, have I heard of the Crystal City Underground Disc Golf Course? It's the world's only subterranean frisbee golf course, built in a 200-acre sand miner cave. That sounds incredible. Although also very difficult to find your disc if it gets lost in the dark. Have you tried that? Does it get lost often? I mean, I played on Monday this past week, this couple days ago, and I came the closest I've ever come to losing a disc. I really just could not find it, and I'm lucky that I had 3 other friends there who were able to help me find it. And that was in daylight outside, so I can only imagine doing that in a cavern. But otherwise, that sounds awesome. James has kind of a similar question to David's a second ago. Have I ever thought about doing a shorter hour-long family or party game? I haven't thought about doing a party game because I think that would fall. I wouldn't want to make an hour-long party game. As for a family game, we do have a family game, and that's My Little Scythe. My Little Scythe is our family weight game. But a lot of our games, we do aim for families. Like Between Two Castles, definitely family weight. Plays in 45 minutes, simultaneous play, a lot of like fun interactions. So I think Between Two Castles fits into that mold pretty well. And Between Two Cities is also an even shorter length game that is great for families. David has a compliment about Joe, and I agree. Joe, our director of communications, is awesome. And I will have a fun announcement next week about a new StoneMier employee. I'm really, really excited to share this with you and the world. Socrates asked about a Codename game for information about it, but I don't talk about details about Codename games. So I appreciate you asking, but no, I don't share information about those games. Christine says, did Jamie address the Scythe LCG gameplay? Is it going to happen? Even if it's in the works, I doubt he'll admit it. You can just talk to me, Christine. I'm right here. I was thinking about designing a Scythe-themed living card game, or I was experimenting with the idea. Um, but I kept coming back to this problem, which was I love for players to experience to have the progression experience during the game itself and not outside of the game. And I think inherently for an LCG, it requires you to do something outside the game involving acquiring cards that other players don't have, or building a deck, or even mashing together cards to form a deck. And I want that progression to happen during the game. So I tried really hard to work on a Scythe LCG, but I kept coming back to wanting that progression and that development and those gameplay elements to happen during the game itself and not before the game. Um, and I know that Jakob doesn't want a cooperative game in the Scythe world. So I think if I ever did an LCG, I would somehow find a way to do those things inside the game, and it would be cooperative. It wouldn't be competitive, where you can gain advantages based on having certain cards or components that other players don't have. So right now, I would say I'm not working on a Scythe LCG. Raphael says, have I updated the Tapestry expansion? All information about the Tapestry expansion is out there now. Reviews are going live starting today, and they will go until the foreseeable future. And the pre-order goes live next Wednesday. Forland says, any chance you can get the Miko to do art on your games? I have reached out to I think it's a man, the Miko. Maybe it's a team. I'm not exactly sure. But I have reached out to them. And just to say that I really love their work and I'd love to work with them at some point in the future. But currently there's no plans to bring them into one of our projects. Gerald says, Messi has activated his free release clause. Which team would I enjoy watching Messi play for this season? You know, I would love to see him go to one of the teams that has coming up from the championship into the Premier League this year. It would be awesome to see a player of Messi's caliber, not on like a team that's already a top tier team, but a team that is at the bottom of say the English Premier League, and to see how big of an impact he can have on elevating that team throughout the Premier League. I know that would never happen, but it would be incredible, and I would have so much respect for a top player if they actually did that. Yeah. Chad says he recently started a Twitch channel to stream his art. That's really cool. Feel free to post a link here, Chad. I noted there's a huge following in the board game community on Twitch. Have I ever jumped onto Twitch to watch gamers or artists? Not too much. Every now and then I see, I think there's a way to tie Twitch to Facebook videos. Maybe I've seen those, or maybe that's just been a Facebook Live video. But no, I very, very rarely go on Twitch. But I'm glad to hear that there's a thriving community there. And we do send games to some reviewers who are on Twitch, or people who play through games on Twitch. Steven mentioned a great co-op LCG as Marvel Champions. And yeah, I agree, that is a great example. I've still only played that once, but I had a good time playing as Iron Man. And the Arkham Horror LCG, I played that also once. That has gotten rave reviews. It's a top-rated game. It's competing with Wingspan for the number 19 spot on Board Game Geek right now. Not that I care too much about those rankings, but I would like Wingspan to pass it. I don't know why. Elaine says, any update on Tapestry plans, employees, and Canadian timing? Really hoping not the delay that we have with Pendulum. Yeah, obviously, yeah. I don't want that delay ever. But we can't control freight shipping, and right now is a very weird time for freight shipping due to COVID. So it is the weirdest I've ever seen with freight shipping, in that usually I know about delays like well in advance of when they're happening, but these delays change on a daily basis almost. Yeah, kind of very weird timing happening with that. But Tapestry plans employees, as far as I know, is almost on the same schedule as Pendulum for Canada. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense. It seems to me that it will inevitably arrive later than Pendulum. But as far as I've seen, it's arriving very close to when Pendulum will arrive at D6 in Canada. But we'll see if that actually happens. Isaac says, any new promo items coming soon for any of your games? You know, Isaac, we've actually moved away from promo items. just because it got kind of weird with Scythe, where I think it was feeding into people's completionist tendencies, which can be fun. It can be fun to have a complete version of a game, but I don't. I think people were having to track down different promos from different times, and we reprint promos all the time. It's not a problem of scarcity, but just getting them from a bunch of different sources. Even MeepleSource does a great job of consolidating our promos there. But if we added like one more promo, then it's like one more thing that you have to buy, one more thing to pay shipping for, and so for we've just kind of stayed away from it for a while. So no, I don't think we have any promos at all in the works right now. I hope that's I'm not forgetting something, but no, nothing that I can think of. Pete says instead of a deck buildy style LCG, what about a story-based Scythe card game where the living aspect was actually just more content? Would something like that fit your goals? Perhaps, but I don't know if that would be considered an LCG if we did that. Um, I did look. I mean, I looked really deeply into Arkham Horror LCG because I think that is very story-based. But yeah, I don't know. I want story to be a part of the LCG experience if I ever go that route. But I think part of that is the whatever new component that you're adding to the game. Um, I think part of it is that I don't want it to be just useful for one scenario. I want you to be able to add something cool that you can use from then on that also doesn't give you an advantage over other players. And I want you to add that during the game itself. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I think in games I really love being able to play a game, especially a competitive game, um, and with some exceptions, some legacy exceptions in particular, play the game and then reset and try a completely different strategy. Whereas with an LCG, you're kind of building your path along the way, and that progression is happening on a meta basis instead of being able to reset and do a completely different strategy from game to game. So that's kind of been one of my hangups for LCG game design. Raphael says that Maradona did what I just described, starting with playing for a lower level team when he played for Napoli in Italy, and that is awesome. That's really really cool. Oriane says, "Have I given any news about Wingspan? When is the next expansion hitting our shelves?" I haven't given any news about it. We are still looking at a 2020 release of the Wingspan Oceania expansion, though. Chad says, not sure if you have the rights, but have I ever considered turning the Scythe world into a role playing game? We have for a while. Yeah, we actually accepted some submissions for different people, and once I got the submissions, I realized I have no idea if these are good or not because I don't play role playing games. And I also realized that the role playing market is very different than the hobby game market. And at that point, I apologized to those who had submitted to us because I was like, we are not a good fit. We are not a role playing game company. And so at that point, I basically told Jakob if he wanted to pursue role playing games for Scythe that I wouldn't consider them a conflict with the tabletop rights that we have, and that he was welcome to do so. But StoneMier Games won't be doing an RPG game. I guess the one chance that could change is that the new hire that I talked about that I'll talk about in detail next week. We've hired a new person, and that person's has many responsibilities that are completely unrelated to RPG. But this person also just happens to be an avid RPG player, so they know RPGs very well. If we ever wanted to go into RPGs, that this person would be the one to handle it, and would be a great asset in that way. But I am not that person. David says, if I played Fog of Love with my girlfriend, yes, Megan and I have played Fog of Love twice. Yeah, we've had a good time with it. I think the second time was more fun than the first. It's hard to. In fact, the game advises you to play as your character and not as yourself. And I don't know. The first time was a little weird in that way because we tried really hard to do that and ended up being less fun. And so I think we put a little bit more of ourselves in the next play and had more fun with it that way. Zach says, do I look at the top 10 or top 100 or so on Board Game Geek in order to get ideas for future games or decide on future specific mechanisms to explore further? I mean, I study games of all types all the time, not just in the top 100. But I don't know. I guess one way that you could look at this is, do I ever look at the mechanisms specifically found in the top 100 to see if there are any patterns there of what people are really enjoying? And I haven't done that, but that would be interesting to do to see if the like X number of worker placement games are in the top 100. How many cooperative games are in the top 100 versus competitive games, things like that. Mary says, how about a visual tour of the room that you're in? moving my camera is going to throw things way off, so I'm not going to move the camera. But you can see, let's see, back here you can see Biddy sleeping on his chair. This is a map of Wales because I visited Wales about 10 years ago and had a great time there. This is cat food. That's cat litter. This is the cabinet of secrets, things that I can't show you. These are printers, black and white printer, color printer for prototypes. This is a whiteboard that I haven't used in a while. What else can you see down there? I think that's pretty much all you can see. And off camera right over here is one of my shelves of games. But if I move the camera, I will mess everything up, so I don't want to do that. Dawson says, something like Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle could potentially work for a Scythe living card game. You unlock new cards each game, but the decks reset each game, and you have to build it up the next time it's played. That's true. That's true. You could do that. That is a cooperative game. I think it could still work. I guess then, though, what's the point of the LCG? Like, what's the difference then between an LCG and just a deck builder with expansions? I think that's the thing that I struggled with. I was like, okay, I'm essentially just building a deck builder with expansions at this point, and not how is it also an LCG? I know that's just semantics, but I don't want to call something an LCG and unintentionally mislead people if it's not actually an LCG. Jonathan says, what's something you're still learning about the game design production after several awesome game releases? Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I learn things all the time about production, especially as production continues to evolve. What's something I learned recently about production? I was looking at some things about metal components recently and learned about differences between painted metal elements and how they can get scratched, and different colors, like the color plating for metal elements. They're limited to a certain number of colors, basically colors that look like metal, like gold and silver and bronze and copper, things like that. So I learned that on the production side. From the other side, from pre-production and design side, one thing that I'm still working on, and that I'm finding very difficult, is how to proofread and find proofreaders who are able to identify gameplay mistakes in any product. Which I know it sounds simple, even if you know a game really well, but it seems to be extremely difficult to do this. It's a lot easier to focus on typos or things that aren't clear, or sentences that can be phrased better, or layout that can be laid out better. But to identify something that is either incorrect compared to the prototype, or is just like missing something, content is just missing even though it should be there. It seems easy, but it's extremely difficult. I got a very interesting email from someone the other day about this topic, and I was like, I want to be able to do this better. I want our proofreaders to be able to do this better, but I don't know how to make that happen. If any of you have any thoughts about how to make that happen, how to get better at doing that, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Tyler says an LCG, and for those who are watching and don't know what an LCG is, it's a living card game. That's the acronym that we're using here. Tyler says an LCG similar to Seventh Continent playstyle, where you follow a nationless mech crew, would be awesome to journey through game to game in a Scythe LCG adaptation. Yeah, what's the LCG part of that? I guess would the LCG part about it be that when you buy a new pack, it's a new region of the world, things like that, or region of the map? And again, how is that different than just buying an expansion? I think that's a core differentiation between, like, what is the difference between buying an LCG pack that maybe is more, maybe it's a scenario. Is that what it is? Yeah, maybe that's the difference. That is more scenario based than a whole new expansion that adds permanent content to the game. George says, "Am I feeling much better as a vegetarian now? Have I given up meat for good?" He's also considering, but it's hard. I try to eat less meat if I can. That's great, George. If that's feeling good for you, I'm glad you're trying that out. It's been very new for me to try this year. Last year, I actually started eating less meat, and then I went almost fully vegetarian. I did cheat recently and had a piece of sushi because I really wanted one. And I think that's what I found is nice about it. I don't want to fully call myself vegetarian because on occasion, if I'm in a special circumstance where I want to try a bite of something that looks delicious, I want to give myself permission to do that. but I want that to be very rare because I do feel a lot healthier as a vegetarian. I was worried about the protein. I thought protein would be a big problem, but I find plenty of sources for protein: nuts and seeds and cheese and fake meat, all this stuff. There's plenty of sources of protein. The one thing that I can't say yet is that I haven't gotten my cholesterol read ever since I pretty much went vegetarian, and I want to do that because my cholesterol wasn't great before doing this, and I want to see if it's had a positive impact. And if I do, or when I do, I will report that so you can see if there is a positive impact there. Sean says, does the Sandbox game have upgradable characters? Yeah. I mean, I can't tell any details yet, and the game is still evolving. But yeah, definitely, there's a strong sense of progression on a character level in the game. It's not a role playing game though. Yeah, role playing games, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how people talk about role playing games in terms of the tabletop experience. Role playing games to me are so much about the narrative created by a human narrator, a dungeon master, who is and players just saying, I want to do this, and the dungeon master giving them a way to do or not do that thing. It's very free flowing, basically. Whereas there's a lot of structure in a game that I think that's the core difference between it. So I don't really know if there's any tabletop game that I would call an RPG. Even like Legacy of Dragonhold, I wouldn't call an RPG because you are following the narrative and the mechanisms that the game allows you to play, not those beyond the scope of that, not beyond those that you can just say something out loud and make it happen. Bradley says, do you prefer playing and or publishing a game in a familiar world or a new one? Usually new. Yeah, I mean, I like to linger in a world for a while for expansions and story development, but then I like to venture into a new world for new games. Forland says that you mentioned that you're not going to do promos. Not definitely that we're not going to do it, but that we don't have any in the works and that I don't plan on making more promos. So where can I get the Between Two Cities promos? I already have the Saxman Room. I believe there's 2 more. We have, I think there are 3 promos for it, and I think 2 of them are on our web store. One we don't have access to right now because it's sold out, but hopefully we'll make more of those in the future. It's never our intention to say, we're never making this promo again, because we don't really do exclusives like that. Christopher says, how do I determine future games and their mechanisms? Do you try to build a game to cater to gamers' future taste, or do you build your game for yourself first? Definitely not for myself first, because I want my game to be played, or I want our games to be played by many, many people, not just at my table here. But I don't know. It's kind of beyond the scope of your question a little bit, because when I have a game idea, it's either a thematic idea or it's a mechanical idea, and I sit down and just start brainstorming what mechanisms make sense for that theme or what themes make sense for that mechanism, and it all just gets mashed together. And then I pause a lot and say, does this already exist? What am I doing different here? How can I be innovative and add something new? I pause a lot to ask that during the playtesting process, during the brainstorming process. I'm constantly asking myself, is this something new? And something new that will be fun, or that could be fun, or that is now fun for people. So it's looking at innovation and whether or not it's actually fun, and you don't really know if it's actually fun until you playtest it a lot. Adam says, do I recommend any cardstock for printing prototype cards? Yes. Yeah. I like this cardstock a lot. It's 80 weight. I believe it's 80 weight. Yeah, 80 pound, hammer mill, premium color copy. It has a nice, it's like a little glossy, but it holds the color really well and doesn't rub off. I really like this. Chad says, do I have any games on your top games right now that really surprised you by how much you like them? Will we be shocked by number 1? Perhaps a little bit. Yeah, you'll have to see what I say about my number 1 game right now. This is the video that I've already filmed that will go live on YouTube on Sunday about my top 10 favorite games right now. Yeah, there are a few games that really surprised me how much I like them that ended up on this list, and a few that also ended up on the honorable mentions just because it wasn't quite ready to put them onto a top 10, but they might appear there in the future if I play them a lot more. Carol says that people tried to play the game based strictly on the rulebook with no prior knowledge of the game. They would find, so this is answering my question about proofreading. They would find holes, and after you explain your intention, they might be able to help you. Could that help? That would help, yes. That's actually a great idea. I don't want to say that that there's any way around that. I think the caveat there is that it would require someone to not just have the rules, but also have a prototype copy of the game to play, which adds time, but I think it's totally worth that time to do that. So yeah, we should do that during the proofreading stage. I mean, in a way, and here's actually the challenge there, which is that this is the real challenge, because this is one of the reasons that we playtest, period. I write out the rulebook and we send it to playtesters, and a lot of the feedback we get is about the rulebook itself and about the clarity of the rulebook. The problem often ends up occurring later on when the rulebook is typeset and something has changed or is a little different or is left out somehow between the original file and the final rulebook. And at that point, we're no longer thinking about the functionality of the rulebook because we've already playtested it. We already have that content. But perhaps the solution is to also, at the fully typeset stage, to have someone again make the prototype and playtest it with no knowledge of the game, and to see if they are missing anything from the rulebook, from the final typeset, fully laid out rulebook itself. I like that. Jared says, when coming up with a game, do you have expansions in mind when you're creating? Are they things that you wanted in the original game but couldn't put in, or do they come to mind after? They almost always come to mind after. My focus for designing a core game or publishing a core game is to put everything in that game that makes it as fun and functional and awesome as possible. And everything else gets pushed aside and cut. And most of that stuff is cut because it doesn't make the game more fun or more functional, more intuitive, more balanced, all that stuff. And so usually I am not thinking about expansions at all at that point. It's only months later where the game is usually published at that point, and I'm thinking about, okay, what can we add to the game? People seem to want more of this. People want something a little bit different in this area, or this area expanded, or this area contracted, and that's when I start to think about expansions. John says, with regards to gameplay proofreading, do I have an example of such a proofread? What is an example? We actually did have a near miss. I mean, this is something that we've kind of addressed, but we had a near miss on the Wingspan Oceania expansion where, and it's a graphic design mistake. Our graphic designer is human. She's awesome. She's also going to make mistakes. And when she was typesetting a certain component in the Wingspan expansion, she missed something that was in the prototype. It was right in the prototype. It wasn't right in the file that she laid out. And we barely caught this mistake. Like it was caught well after any of the proofreaders. None of the proofreaders caught it. They didn't see it, and they didn't see it because they weren't also looking at the original prototype files. So we added a step to the proofreading process where a few of the proofreaders now have to compare the prototype files to the final files to make sure that nothing was missed in that transition. So that's one area where we've addressed it. It was frustrating to have it happen, but I can completely see why it happened, and hopefully that will prevent that from happening in the future. Chad says, do I see any crossovers between games you like and stories that you like to read? Like characters that get more powerful, characters that make tough decisions. Yeah, and beyond, like any form of fiction, reading, movies, TV. Yeah, what is an example here? Because I like the examples you mentioned, the characters that get more powerful, characters that make tough decisions. I think those are great examples. I also like worlds that expand, where you start with a very narrow understanding of a world, and the movie, the TV show, the book series expands that world step by step, and you get to the world itself is progressing and growing as you learn more about it. I love that. I love world building like that. Cody says, do I ever prototype boxes for my games, or do I wait for pre-production copies of your games? Yeah, I don't really prototype boxes. I wait for the pre-production version of that. Jason says, have I played Butterfly? He says it's an ultra simple set collection game available on Board Game Arena, and I'm obsessed with how it plays at all counts. I haven't, but I love the recommendation, and I will make a note of that. Butterfly. Thank you. Yeah. George has a note about how playtesters should understand the game rules and how the game plays, and have to think clearly about the game in their minds so they can be able to spot mistakes of any nature. Yeah, I think that's a great trait in a proofreader. A few more questions, then I'll sign off for the day. Thank you so much for joining me today. Alex says, with a 3D printer market approaching maturity, do I think there's an opportunity to grow towards the print-and-play model through the commercialization of 3D models? I think we're pretty far off for that. I mean, I'd love to see a poll. Alex, put a poll out there to see how many gamers own or have easy access to a 3D printer, and let me know the percentage. Once that percentage hits like 80%, I might be interested in it. But until then, I think it's really far off from pursuing that as a viable model of production and publishing. Adrian says, and in fact, maybe I'll do a poll on that myself. I don't want to put that responsibility on you. 3D printer poll. Adrian says, what's my most successful track that I prefer to use in, I'm guessing you're talking about in Tapestry. I like to jump all over the place, but I usually start with the science track because I like to experiment. I don't have a set path, and the science track might, give me a little nudge towards a specific track, and I might say, okay, I'll go with that. But often, sometimes I go with my civilization, with my starting tapestry card. It might lead me in a certain direction. I'm okay with the game leading me a little bit, and then I can make decisions from there. I think that's it for comments. Perfectly at 11 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining me and Biddy today for the live cast, and I will see you next week for our monthly e-newsletter and the Tapestry Plans and Ploys pre-order. I'll see you then. Take care. Have a great day and a great week. Bye.